911, what is your emergency?
I just got home from work, and my wife wasn't there, which is unusual, and my kids should have been there by now from, daycare. So I was like, oh, maybe she went on a walk. I couldn't find her, so I called the daycare to see what time she picked up the kids. The kids were never picked up, so I got freaked out, so I hit, the Find My iPhone app thing, and it said that it showed her phone, at our end of our driveway. We don't have really good service.
Okay.
Not the end of our driveway, but the end of our street. So I just drove down there, and I saw her phone with her headphones because she started running again, and I found her phone, and it's got, hair ripped out of it, in the headphones. So I'm, totally freaking out, thinking, somebody, grabbed her.
Okay, what's your address?
In November of 2016, 34-year-old Sherri Papini made national headlines when she was abducted while jogging. A massive search was conducted that led law enforcement and concerned citizens on a search that lasted nearly a month. When Sherri finally resurfaced 3 weeks later on Thanksgiving Day, she was covered in bruises and had quite the story to tell, claiming that she had been taken at gunpoint by 2 Hispanic women while out for an afternoon jog on Wednesday, November 2nd. Fast forward 4 years to April of 2022, and the nation watched as Sherri formally pled guilty to faking her own abduction and lying to the FBI.
Sherri Papini appeared in court via Zoom this morning. She admitted that she made up the story about being abducted at gunpoint and pleaded guilty to lying to federal agents and defrauding the state's victim compensation fund.
Now, in 2024, new information has been uncovered that may help shed light on why Sherri did what she did. I'm Brooke, and today we'll be diving into the latest updates on the Sherri Papini case. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Armchair Investigator. When Sherri failed to pick up her 2 children from daycare, her family knew something was terribly wrong. Using the Find My iPhone app, her husband tracked her cell phone to a road near their home on Sunrise Drive, just north of Redding. Police used tracker dogs around the area, but they weren't able to pick up on Sherri's scent. Sherri's family was terrified and were doing everything they could to bring her home. A $40,000 reward was being offered for her discovery, and friends and family set up GoFundMe pages to garner additional resources. Her husband Keith even appeared on Good Morning America, insisting that his wife had been taken against her will. And it wasn't just her family that was desperate to find her. The Redding community Sherri called home wanted to see her found safe too. Hours turned to days, and days turned to weeks. The notion that Sherri would be found alive began to dwindle with each passing day. And then, a miracle.
Hi, I have an emergency. There's a lady on the side of the road needing help. She's chained up, her vision's blurry, and she needs an ambulance.
You see her chained up?
Yes. Her name is Sherri Papini.
22 days after she had been abducted, Sherri was found in Yolo County, 146 miles away from home on Interstate 5. Sherri had restraints around her wrists, ankles, and waist. She had scabs and bruises all over her body, was branded on her right shoulder, and her hair had been chopped off. She was taken to a hospital in Sacramento where she was treated for her injuries and released the same day. Now, it was time to figure out who had done this to Sherri and why. Investigators knew that Sherri had been through a lot, and what she experienced was no doubt traumatizing. And while detectives wanted to proceed with an investigation, they didn't want to push Sherri too hard and re-traumatize her. Over the following days, weeks, months, and years, Sherri was able to give them details, telling law enforcement that her captors were 2 Hispanic women driving a dark-colored SUV. She said one of the women had pulled out a small revolver and ordered her to get into the vehicle. She went on to detail that they had played mariachi music during the drive. For the 22 days Sherri was held captive, she claimed that the women had kept their faces covered with bandanas, but thought that one was in her 20s or 30s, and the other was in her 40s or 50s. In her initial interview, Sherri said the 2 women claimed that law enforcement was involved in her abduction, saying that her buyer was a cop, and most of the time she was kept in a closet. In the months following Sherri's alleged abduction and release, little progress was made in the case. Police weren't even able to determine a motive. It wasn't long before rumors sparked that the whole abduction was a hoax. something the family, the sheriff, and even the mayor of Reading vehemently denied. On one hand, there were glaring abnormalities and damning information discovered. But, on the other hand, people argued that there was no way someone would do something like this to themselves. Then, in 2017, a December 2003 incident report from the Shasta County Sheriff's Office was found. It wasn't much. In fact, the whole report was just 2 sentences. But it was enough to make detectives pause for a second. The report said Sherri's mother, Loretta, claimed that then 21-year-old Sherri had been harming herself and blaming it on her mother. The abnormalities surrounding Sherri's abduction were glaring. For starters, police knew how rare it was for women to be abducted by other women. And then there was the matter of which her phone was found. It had been located neatly on the side of the road, with no damage to it. There was also reports that Sherri had been talking to other men just before her disappearance, and police thought it was odd that she slept most of the drive when she was abducted. In October of 2017, just before the 1-year anniversary of the abduction, investigators announced that DNA from a woman was found on Sherri's body, and that male DNA had been found on the sweatpants and underwear that she was wearing the day she was found, something detectives thought was odd since her captors were both female, and Sherri hadn't mentioned any men being involved. The sample was uploaded to CODIS, but it didn't pull a match. At least, not right away. More than 4 years would go by with no significant updates made public until March of 2022, when the FBI and local law enforcement made a massive announcement. Sherri had in fact not been abducted. She had actually been staying voluntarily with an ex-boyfriend in Costa Mesa. See, detectives had still been working quietly behind the scenes, and in 2019, they had requested a familial DNA search, a technique that searches offender DNA databanks for a father, son, or brother of an unknown perpetrator. In March of 2020, investigators were notified that a potential male relative of the unknown DNA found on Sherri's clothing had been identified, and that family member was related to Sherri's ex-boyfriend. 3 months later, on June 9th, investigators traveled to the ex-boyfriend's house to collect items from his trash. They were able to pull DNA from a bottle of green tea that matched the DNA collected from Sherri's clothing. In August of 2020, investigators traveled to Costa Mesa again, this time to sit down with Sherri's ex and talk to him. And boy, did he talk. He admitted to police that he helped Sherri run away. But how does he even fit into this picture? Well, the two had known each other since they were teenagers. They dated in 2006 and had once been engaged. In 2015, he had found some of Sherri's personal items and sent them to her parents. Upon receiving the items, Sherri called her ex and confided in him that she'd been saving money and was planning to run away, saying that her husband Keith had been abusing her and the police weren't doing anything about it. Sherri's ex wanted to help, and he agreed to come and get her on November 2nd. Now, just to be clear, according to Shasta County Sheriff's officials, Sherri hadn't filed any police reports against her husband. Armed with information from Sherri's ex, on August 13, 2020, investigators asked Sherri and her husband Keith to come down to the police station, telling them that they had updates they wanted to share with them.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us.
Yeah.
As always, your presence here is voluntary.
Yeah.
You can go at any time, and all we want is truthful statements because it's a crime to lie to federal officers.
Wow, yeah. No, that's good.
Understood?
Yeah.
Sorry, forget about that part. So, but recently we found a familial DNA hit. So what that does, it just tells us it came from a certain person. So like the mother or the father or a son or an uncle or however that is, it just hits that like somewhere in this family tree is where the DNA comes from.
Okay.
So with that, we open up the investigation. We go into who could it be within the family. So once we started opening up those doors and looking through the family members and just trying to see Facebook stalking them, criminal histories, just that normal investigation that we do once we start looking into things, we started finding some interesting things.
Okay.
So one of the things that came out to us, is there anything in there that looks
Of interest or notable?
interest or
And that's an awkward photo, but
Yeah.
no.
Keith was excited. Sherri, not so much. See, Sherri had previously given detectives a description of the house she had been held captive in, and it looked an awful lot like the room she was staying at her ex's.
To me, I see a table there that somewhat looks like something you described to me in the past, and then I see wood paneling. Talking about the room.
Yeah, we noted both of those things back in August
Yeah.
of 2017. Is when we spoke with you about, and you showed us this picture of the table.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that, Sherri?
Yes, I do.
And so that was of interest. With that, we started looking at different people and who might be involved and just trying to figure it out.
We're showing you all of this because ultimately this is the house that you were at. We talked to the people who lived there. We found the house. We found who was involved. We talked to who was involved. We talked to family who knows that you were there. And talked to a couple people talked to one guy who did see you during this event. Unfortunately, there's a lot of truths, there's a lot of things that were said that we have always confirmed, that we've always said. There's a lot of truths, and then there's some unknowns. Like, all we want is to be able to tell the truth. That's all we've ever wanted from day one. The reason why you can describe the room is because you stayed in the room in the dark for hours, for days on end. The reason why you lost so much weight is because you stopped eating. The reason why you got a rash on your arm is because you cleaned his house. The reason why the brand is because he went to the store, bought the branding tools, and branded you. The reason why your nose was broke is because of a hockey stick. He passed a polygraph test that said it's not an abduction. She asked me to come get her.
No.
I rented a car. No. I drove up and picked her up.
But Sherri wasn't budging. She stuck to her original story, flat out denying that she ran away with her ex. Unfortunately for Sherri, her ex had already spilled all the details, telling detectives that Sherri cut her own hair, and her injuries, well, they were mostly self-inflicted, though he did admit to shooting a hockey puck at her leg, but only because she told him to. He told detectives that he wasn't sure of Sherri's intentions during her stay with him, but he believed they might end up in a romantic relationship again. That notion was short-lived, however, when Sherri told him that she missed her kids and wanted to go back home. The two made the drive back in a rental car, where he dropped Sherri off on a county road along I-5, telling investigators that she brought stuff to bind her own wrists and ankles. Prosecutors said Sherri applied for and received more than $30,000 from the California Victims' Compensation Board, an organization that provides financial assistance and compensation to victims of crimes. They also filed court documents claiming that both Keith and Sherri used the donations from a GoFundMe account for personal use. After paying down credit cards, the couple allegedly divided the rest of the money between their bank accounts for personal spending. It's estimated that Sherri cost Shasta County, state and federal taxpayers, and donors more than $200,000 in time and resources that could have went to real victims. More and more people from Sherri's past began speaking out about her, describing her as a serial liar, with another ex saying that she was a compulsive liar who would regularly make up bizarre stories and lie about the most menial things. In 2022, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento sentenced Sherri to 18 months in jail for wire fraud and lying to authorities. In a statement, Sherri said, "I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused my family, my friends, all the good people who needlessly suffered because of my story, and those who worked so hard to try to help me. I will work the rest of my life to make amends for what I have done." After her arrest, Sherri was ordered to pay more than $300,000 in restitution to the California Victims' Compensation Board, the Social Security Administration, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, and the FBI. Not only was the world watching Sherri, but they were also watching her husband Keith. Onlookers wanted to see what he would do in response to all the information uncovered. For years, Keith appeared to support his wife through it all: the abduction, talking to other men, the discovery of male DNA on her underwear, and the eventual hoax. But all that changed when he filed for divorce just 2 days after Sherri pled guilty. In his April 20th divorce filing asking to dissolve their 13-year marriage, he also filed for sole custody of their 2 children. In a declaration to the Shasta County Family Court, Keith wrote, "The whole problem started in November of 2016, when Sherri left our children at a daycare and simply disappeared. Both I, and especially our children, were traumatized by her disappearance, and I spent much time and money trying to find my wife. The trauma inflicted upon our children at the unexpected loss of their mother was heartbreaking," adding that the fallout from the abduction hoax has kept life in turmoil for the family ever since. Keith also referenced Sherri's March 3rd arrest that their children witnessed, saying in March 2022, Sherri Papini was literally tackled by law enforcement officers while arresting her, all in the immediate presence of our children. They were again traumatized. After she was released from jail, she assured them that the arrest was all a mistake. The children have now learned that their mother lied to them about her disappearance, lied to them about how she was abused by 2 Hispanic women, and lied to them about her arrest. He went on to say that because she was facing prison time and having to pay thousands of dollars in restitution, he didn't believe Sherri was in a position to provide good parenting. Besides seeking sole custody, Keith also asked for all their property, including their home, 3 cars, their boat, and their RV, and asked to be cleared of any responsibility for Sherri's debts. Keith says his intuition told him that the moment he was reunited with his wife after her abduction that she was lying. He knew that for the majority of people who had been abducted for as long as Sherri had been, that the likelihood of them being found alive was slim. But his doubts quieted when he saw the extent of Sherri's injuries, which included a broken nose, massive weight loss, bruises that indicated she had been beaten, and a brand on her right shoulder. Keith said that whenever his doubts resurfaced, which happened often, Sherri always had an excuse. And he didn't think his wife was capable of abandoning their children. When Keith finally learned the truth, he was devastated. Right now, Keith says his main focus is on his family. "I want to move forward. I want to give my children the best possible childhood I can, and just surround them with loving people. And that's my biggest goal right now." Sherri's ex-boyfriend didn't face any criminal charges. In fact, Shasta County Sheriff Sergeant Kyle Wallace stated, "I think the easiest way to describe it is he was doing what a friend asked. Because she asked to be hit, she asked to be burned, and he just went along with what she said. It's 2 consenting adults." In August of 2023, Sherri was released from prison after serving 10 of her 18-month sentence. Upon being released, she entered a halfway house in Sacramento County. From there, she moved in with her boyfriend, an automotive dealer by the name of Sean. Despite trying to keep a low profile, she was photographed in June of 2024. It's reported that the two live about 30 miles east of Redding, and Sherri will remain on supervised release until sometime in late 2026. Papers filed in the Papini's custody case show that Sherri has made a $100 payment toward clearing her more than $300,000 debt. Something that has outraged the public, considering Sherri now lives in a $755,000 home. According to Daily Mail, authorities applied for a writ to seize the home in an effort to recoup money that Sherri owes. The property is actually owned by her boyfriend through an LLC, so it's unlikely that authorities will be able to seize the home. Sherri's new relationship has been under heavy scrutiny, with onlookers finding it suspicious that Sherri's partner Sean lost his wife unexpectedly in September of 2021, just 4 days after asking for a divorce. And Keith? Well, he insists that he and Sherri don't talk at all, telling TV Insider, "I don't speak to her at all whatsoever. I might see her in court for our court stuff, but no, I don't talk to her." In fact, to this very day, Keith is still shocked by what Sherri did. The two were married in 2009 and went on to have 2 children together. Keith said he and Sherri were tied at the hip, and their marriage felt like an almost constant honeymoon state, saying, "I truly felt like we had an amazing, happy family." As far as their children are concerned, she's entitled to scheduled visitations with them once a month, and also remains in contact with them over the phone. And it seems like Sherri is ramping up for her future. During one of her supervised visitations with her children, she told them that she was starting a foundation to help people and was an author, telling them, "Mommy is making a business that will be a foundation to help people. Do you know what an author is? Mommy's also an author now. She's writing 2 books. I work lots of hours to write chapter books. So when I tell you I'm working remotely, that means I'm at home writing chapters on my laptop." Now, as part of Sherri's therapy, it was suggested that she write about her experience. And that's exactly what she did. She titled it 22 Days. And I'm wondering if that's one of the books that she's working on publishing. Of course, everyone wants to know why. Why did she do all this? Hulu's documentary on Sherri that aired in June of 2024 sheds light on who Sherri was. It gives viewers an opportunity to hear from friends and family. According to Sherri's older sister Sheila, growing up, the two experienced a lot of childhood trauma. Sheila was more like a mother to Sherri. At 16 years old, Sherri dropped out of high school and ran away. Most everyone close to her says that Sherri likes to exaggerate everything. I think Sherri was always looking for attention, was always looking for someone to save her, and I think that played a big part in why she did what she did. It was like she fully immersed herself in the role of being abducted, almost as if she got herself to believe it. Keith said she would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. She wouldn't eat food unless it was prepared by someone she trusted. She couldn't go to the bathroom with the door closed, couldn't drive a car. It was a lot. Watching the documentary, it's easy to forget that she wasn't actually abducted. The way she cries and sobs, the PTSD, it's heartbreaking, and as the viewer, you have to keep pulling yourself out and reminding yourself that the abduction never happened. It sounds like she may have been bordering on Munchausen's and Munchausen's by proxy syndrome. It was revealed that she had her kids inhaling rubbing alcohol so that they would get sick and she could take them to the doctor. This case has been shocking from the get-go, and I think the part that gets me the most is when detectives said that had she told the truth when she first returned home, she would have been criminally clean, meaning no charges would have been brought against her. I feel so awful for her kids and for Keith too. It's obvious that Sherri had been gaslighting him for years. Here was a man who thought he had the perfect life, and then overnight his world turned upside down. That takes years to recover from, but what do you guys think? Sherri's out of prison. It sounds like she's writing a few books. Will you be reading them? There's also a docuseries in the works with Investigation Discovery that's going to be released in 2025. And it's supposed to be the first time that Sherri sits down and gives her side of the story. Will you be tuning in for that? I definitely want to hear her side of the story, but I'm not sure that there's anything she could say that would soften public opinion of her. If you appreciated today's video, give it a thumbs up, and hey, while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on the next investigation.